Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's 1 million by 1 million strategy roundtable for entrepreneurs. 1M by 1M, as you know, is the first and only global virtual accelerator for technology startups. We run it from Silicon Valley, but we have a global footprint, and we've been doing this for a very, very long time. We founded the company in 2010, and it was actually based on this experiment of online mentoring that we started back in 2008 that predates the 1 million by 1 million program in its full format. This is the 645th roundtable, and we are going to focus today's session on a conversation with my friend Ashmeet Sidana, Chief Engineer, as he calls himself, of Engineering Capital. And for a moment, I want to underscore what he is claiming here is to be a hands-on techie. And if you look at how founders or partners of VC firms introduce themselves, they will call themselves general partner or managing partner or managing director. But Ashmeet has chosen to call himself chief engineer, which is amazing because he is a hardcore techie person. I always learn a lot talking to him about our industry, our business, the startup business, the venture funded startup business. And today we're going to do something very special, actually. This is kind of like a kickoff of a series that we have just started, which is talking to investors about their artificial intelligence investment thesis. And it's super contemporary, super important. We have been covering AI entrepreneurship for a while now, as you know, but at the moment we are at like the peak of the market and a lot has happened. And on this forum, we're going to unpack what's going on and why what's going on is going on. So welcome, Ashmeet. It's a real pleasure to have you back here. And let's get started.
Thank you, Shamana. Always happy to be back.
So what is your investment thesis? In the age of AI, what are you thinking? How are you looking at the market?
My focus at Engineering Capital is very early stage investments in software companies that have a technical insight. That technical insight could come from AI. That's obviously a very recent phenomenon that has become much more successful, much more popular, and has reached a tipping point. We'll talk about some of those tipping points in AI. But at Engineering Capital, for me, it doesn't have to come only from AI. The other important attribute is that I invest in capital efficient companies, companies that take a very small amount of capital, which are leveraging their technical insight to hopefully build a big business. Those are the two dimensions of my investment focus.
So Ashmeet, you have invested in some companies where the technical insight comes from AI, yes?
Yes, for sure.
Can we pick maybe a few of those case studies and double click down? Tell us what you've invested in, why you've invested in, what was the technical insight, and just some general understanding of a few case studies where you have played your hand.
Sure. So I want to start by recognizing that AI itself is a field that people have been working on for decades. And we have slowly been making progress from a technical perspective in terms of what we were able to do with, broadly speaking, machine learning, AI, that aspects of technology. However, a few years ago, we reached a tipping point. I think the popular tipping point in the media and the press was obviously ChatGPT. But I would say the technical tipping point was really a paper written about a decade ago, an ImageNet paper by Jeff Hinton from University of Toronto, which really demonstrated that you could recognize dogs versus cats in images using machine learning. And it was a phenomenal development that they were able to show using neural networks. And that is when I think companies, far-sighted companies like Google, Microsoft, etc., started investing very deeply. I got involved with the University of Toronto, started looking at the AI space. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I made some investments, recognizing that we were reaching a tipping point. Of course, we couldn't predict that there would be so much popular press and popular coverage. We didn't know ChatGPT was coming. but it was clear that the technology had reached a tipping point for usefulness. So here are two examples. I was the first investor in a company called Evinced, Evinced, and the founders had the observation that you could use vision, machine learning, machine vision, to help developers make websites, mobile applications accessible. Accessible meaning available to people with special needs. And if that was the only insight, it would have been an interesting company. It would certainly have made the world a better place for people who have special needs. But what Naveen and Gal layered on top of that was this insight that they were able to do it in a way which made it better for regular people, for people who did not have special needs. And the fact that they were doing it with AI, they were doing it with machine vision, made it, of course, available at scale, very cheaply, very quickly. And so today they've built a substantial business. The example I always like to give when describing Evinced is imagine watching a TV which has closed captioning. Today we take closed captioning for granted. You can go on YouTube, you can turn it on, you put your TV on, it comes on. And of course, closed captioning is a feature that was designed for people who are hearing impaired. So special needs, you're hearing impaired, you can read what someone is saying. However, it turns out that most people, 99% of the people who are not hearing impaired, have still used closed captioning occasionally. And that's what I mean by making it better for people who don't have special needs. So here's an accessibility feature that occasionally makes it better for everyone and makes the whole product a better experience. So that's what Evinced did with machine vision. They're a huge business now. We raised a Series A with Microsoft, Series B with Insight. They're a very large company now. And I'm very proud to have been the first and only investor in their pre-seed round when it was just a twinkle in the eye of Naveen and Dal saying, we think we can solve this problem with some machine vision, machine learning.
And the product they're selling is a closed captioning product?
No, closed captioning is only an example I'm using to explain how you can make a product, an accessibility feature makes a product better for everyone. The product that they sell is a developer tool which allows companies like hospitals, airlines, hotels, people who have large consumer bases that they deal with. So B2B2C is the business model, which allows them to make their products accessible. So if you go on the Capital One website, or if you're a customer of Salesforce, now all your products are accessible thanks to Evinced.
I see. Okay. All right. You were going to do a second one.
Sure. Another example I'm very proud of is a company called Robust Intelligence. Again, I was the first investor, and then they did a good job. Yaron Singer, PhD from Berkeley, he was at Harvard at that time, when he recognized that as we were developing these AI models, as we were deploying them, they had this problem, which today we call hallucination, or in general, the errors in prediction that occur when you run these AI models, especially on the generative AI side. And so how do you make them robust? That is really the core technology behind Robust Intelligence. The company's been around for about 4.5 years. Again, it's built a very substantial business now, and I think we have some of the best technology in the world to do that.
And what use cases are they applying this on, or how are they going to market?
Yeah, so the initial use cases were in the financial services industry, in models that are embedded. In other words, models that are not used by individual users. They're not available to an outside user. But a simple example would be credit card analytics, fraud analytics, check deposit. One of the first examples that Yaron liked to show was depositing a check using your phone, an image from your phone, which is how most people deposit checks. Of course, checks are going away, but it's a great example because we were able to show that by simply modifying 4 or 5 pixels, just 4 or 5 pixels on that check, you could change the behavior of on the other end, a machine learning system that was going to recognize what you're doing. So our specialty at Robust Intelligence is in adversarial AI. That's really where the technology is.
Okay.
These are deeply technical ideas, no question about it. It's a little bit arcane, a little bit technical, but I want to emphasize that both Robust Intelligence and Evinced, and I have other examples I can give, are companies that were started with a very small amount of capital. $2 or $3 million is all the capital it took to get the product built, commercially available as selling in the market.
I'm happy to do more use cases or case studies because it kind of gives us an idea about what kinds of things you're investing in. I will ask you some questions based on what you've said so far. So let's just carry on with more examples for a moment.
Sure, I can give another example of a company called Concentric.ai, where again I was the first investor in a pre-seed round. And here, what Karthik, who's the founder and CEO of the company, his insight was that we have a separate problem on the internet in the digital age of privacy, security, etc., for which there is an enormous amount of regulation and basically political battling that occurs at all times. And so now you have rules like GDPR, CCPA, all these are regulations that exist, that companies have to follow. Following these rules is relatively straightforward with structured data. You have a database, you have people's addresses and social security numbers. Yes, you can mask them, delete them, change them. You can manage all of that. What do you do with all the unstructured data that exists in your organization? People have much more unstructured data than structured data. It's a HIPAA violation to send someone an email saying, hey, my friend just got diagnosed with cancer. Now, suddenly you have that in your email. You haven't named your friend yet, but perhaps there's another way of identifying that friend in that email thread. So what Concentric built is a set of AI models to identify specific regulatory features that exist in unstructured data. It's completely automated. It runs in your email, runs on your OneDrive, etc., and brings you into compliance. Under California law, you can send an email to a company and say, delete all my data. Well, that's an easy email to send. It's a much harder email for a company to implement when they receive an email like that. And so Concentric will help you do things like that using AI.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you a question that is a bit more general question that will cut across all the things that we've just talked about. AI versus generative AI. We have been covering AI startups, I think, since 2016. And there have been companies, very good companies, that have come up through the AI track over the last 8 years. And then, of course, 2 years ago, or let's say 1 year ago, not even 2 years yet, this whole generative AI phenomenon broke open in the public consciousness, in the popular consciousness. And now when people talk about AI, people tend to refer to generative AI, which I think is a bit of a misunderstanding of what's happening in the industry. For example, there is a company that just went public, Tempus, which is a vertical AI company it's mostly diagnostic AI in medical imaging. This is not a generative AI problem. You don't need to converse with a chatbot. You need to have models that can, diagnose on the basis of images and data, and that's a different problem. But I think, so I guess my question to you is how do you see these different opportunities? There is opportunities of vertical AI that are not generative AI opportunities. There are vertical AI opportunities that are also generative AI opportunities. That is also a class of opportunities. And then there is mission critical vertical AI with generative AI technology built in that hallucinates. So that's not an option. How do you look at all this? And by definition, these are companies that have to have technical insights, have to be able to apply technology to solve these problems. Their entire reason for existence is technology driven solutions. How do you look at all this? How do you parse this set of opportunities, and do you have a preference for one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, this is what makes venture capital and investing such a fascinating business, is that you have to stay in touch with the technology, and the technology advances very rapidly. So in the particular case of AI, which I'll broadly speak, I'll broadly define AI as these areas of machine learning that are used for prediction or recognition or classification. The original idea was to build classifiers using machine learning. And certainly the medical imaging example that you've given is a straight up classifier, right? You're probably trying to identify some particular thing like a cancer or a thing in radiology or a particular marker in genes, etc. That's a classic case of a classifier. Um, Generative AI is a subset of AI where you are trying to predict the next token in a language using a model. That's the core case of generative AI. We can extend that now to multimodal models also, using sound, using video, using images, etc. also. It turns out it's very powerful over there. But here's, I think, the most important thing to remember about this space. These are all specific techniques that are a point in time. There's nothing magical about generative AI that says that it is a law of physics, that it is some core technology which will always be the important one. Tomorrow, someone could write a new paper. Tomorrow, someone could write a new model which is more efficient, which works better, perhaps uses less energy, perhaps makes higher quality predictions. And then we would not be using an LLM. We would not be using sort of today what people refer to as generative AI. For doing it. So this is just a point in time technology that happens to be the state of the art today. Yes, it's very powerful. Yes, it's very useful, but it's the state of the art today. From an entrepreneurship perspective, for a founder, it's important to understand that generative AI and LLM techniques are based on scale. They are based on using massive amounts of data to train models, and therefore they're very expensive. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars to train a foundational model from scratch. And so really, that's not a venture style business. While there are some VCs who have invested in that, I don't consider that a venture business. That's sort of
not a capital efficient venture style business.
Absolutely. It is definitely not capital efficient to do that. I mean, if you need tens of thousands of GPUs and you have to run things for weeks and months to train your model, that is not something that is efficient. And so it's a different part of the market. That doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it bad. It just makes it different. It makes it outside the scope of traditional venture capital, in my opinion.
But there is a way to play this market, right? As we saw in the SaaS business, one of the most kind of masterful stroke that Salesforce did early on was their Force.com platform, and that kind of democratized that business, and a lot of people developed applications on top of Salesforce platform, and the platform as a service industry came about, and companies like Viva were very capital efficient companies that were built on top of Salesforce's platform. There are many others actually. So my thesis is that same logic is going to apply here as well. The open AIs and Anthropics and Coheres and so on in that world, who are raising very large amounts of money and training big data sets, are going to operate as PaaS companies. And then there is a layer of businesses that will build applications on top of those. And that's going to be a venture style business. The applications built on the PaaS are going to be venture style businesses. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. The way I describe the landscape of AI opportunities today for entrepreneurs is, broadly speaking, in three categories. So there are the foundational model types of opportunities, where clearly the quality and the ability of the models keeps increasing, but that is a very capital inefficient business. So if you want to play in that space, you have to think from very deep capital pockets if you're doing it. The second place where you can create value is by coming up with an application of some of these, and you could do it in the Viva style, where you could literally build an application on top of an open AI And if you have some great consumer insight, market insight, business insight, you are able to solve a particular problem in a particular way better than anyone else and execute on it, I think a substantial business can be built very quickly. Because let's face it, this form of AI is a new capability, a new technology in the market today. And then the third category is the picks and shovels business. Because AI is so transformational and a lot of people will be developing and building AI, there is an opportunity to build tools for AI to help people develop AI and install and run and manage and observe all of these AI applications that they will be doing. So the last two categories are much more amenable to the traditional venture model in terms of where I think companies will be created, and I'm investing in both those categories.
So let me double click down on the second one. I will come to the picks and shovels in a moment, but the AI applications, and often these are vertical applications. My observation is that to build a vertical application on top of a LLM, you obviously need to train in domain-specific data. Now, there is a benefit to kind of constraining that model. I don't know, you can tell me more technically how much of this is viable and how are people doing it. If you constrain the model to a small language model, the hallucination problem should go away or at least get much more manageable. Is that a correct statement?
I wouldn't say necessarily a small language model, but yes, in general, I will say that if the set of acceptable output predictions is constrained, if you reduce that, then you reduce the amount of hallucination.
Yes.
You absolutely do that. So yes, your instincts are absolutely right. By having a narrower domain and a narrower vertical, you get better quality predictions and less hallucination.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a question that is floating around in the industry because general AI is getting so much publicity. You know, people are focusing on the wrong thing, in my opinion. General AI is, at least from entrepreneurship perspective, general AI doesn't really matter. Does it matter? In your view, does it matter?
I think if it could be built, it would matter hugely. But I am very skeptical that it's going to be built in the very near term. We need some more breakthroughs which have not happened yet, which is completely unpredictable when those breakthroughs will happen. It's like trying to predict the next Nobel Prize. You know,
and as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter because there's so much available right now with which so much can be done in the vertical AI mode. It's almost like I don't really care what happens to general AI.
I'm in violent agreement. There is so much low-hanging fruit and there's so much opportunity right now that if you want to be just a pragmatic entrepreneur and you just want to quickly get started and quickly want to start building a company, there's tons of opportunity in that space.
Yeah, there's tons of opportunity and you can build on top of one of these platforms that are getting, you know, ridiculous amounts of funding and are following through with the platform as a service offering, and you can build on top of that. You don't need to worry about this training the whole model yourself.
Exactly. You are benefiting from this massive investment of capital that has been done on your behalf to train this model, which you can now use for practically free.
Yeah. Now on picks and shovels, what are you seeing and where are the gaps in the market? What would you like to see?
Yeah, the picks and shovels has traditionally been a very lucrative area for venture capital. You know, the tradition is always invest in the picks and shovels, not in the gold itself. If you want to, if you want to be a good investor, and we have seen a tremendous amount of investment in that space. Coming in recently, all the way from developer tools, infrastructure tools, orchestration tools, observability tools. And I think that follows a more traditional path. And the nearest analogy is actually something that you brought up earlier, force.com, which really started the whole PaaS movement and how applications can be quickly deployed and built on other people's platforms. And that is really where you are seeing a lot of companies develop. I continue to see that as a lucrative area. It can be a smaller market So you have to be careful. And when I say smaller, it's all relative. In other words, it's not a $1 trillion market. It may only be $10 billion, which is of course still a gigantic business. So you have to be more careful when you think about how you size it, how you plan your business, and what you are growing with. But yeah, there will be developer tools built for sure in this. The danger in the picks and shovels market is that whatever picks and shovels you build implicitly assumes some sort of a stack. It assumes what type of AI you're going to build. And if tomorrow that changes, you could become irrelevant very quickly.
Yes.
Because this is such a dynamic space and there's so much new developments taking place. But those are the risks that every business takes.
Yeah.
I mean, a new technology can always make a business obsolete. And so you really have to stay on top of the state of the art.
Now, there's obviously all kinds of points of views on general AI. Let's say for discussion's sake, general AI does become viable. Does general AI then eliminate the need for vertical AI, or vertical AI is still needed?
So first, just to clarify, by general AI, I think you are referring to AGI. In other words, artificial general intelligence is really
Yes.
what you're referring to, just to put a fine point on it.
Yes.
The answer to your question will depend on what are the limitations of this AGI. What are the characteristics of this AGI that develops? It's hard to imagine, an AGI that could do anything and everything. In other words, a generally AGI is kind of hard to imagine. So if you think of ourselves as a form of intelligence, we obviously define human beings as intelligence, and most people would define an AGI as something similar or equivalent to a human brain, a human mind, the ability to reason, to learn new tasks, to create new ideas, to be creative, to come up with novel ideas. But we still have limitations, right? We have a very limited memory span. We have to train ourselves. Even then, if we want to build new ideas, we still have to train ourselves for years and decades sometimes to advance the state of the art. And so it really depends on what type of AGI gets built. As I mentioned earlier, I'm skeptical. I don't believe an LLM is a path to AGI. So I don't think just throwing more GPUs and building an ever bigger model and training it more times is going to give you an AGI. So there's going to have to be some other breakthroughs from which AGI will come, and then it will depend on what the constraints of those breakthroughs are.
Yeah, the way I've been processing this AGI question is as follows. First and foremost, you and I are relatively important human beings, not artificial, real human beings. But, if I decide now that I want to be a heart surgeon, this is not a reasonable path that I can follow. Maybe if AGI is part of the equation, that AGI can be trained very rapidly in that skill set, but it still has to be trained in that skill set. Can we assume that AGI, when it becomes a reality, is going to be an expert in every domain, in every possible way, can solve every possible problem, can be an expert in every single, function? There's maybe one way of thinking about training AGI to become an expert in everything, but that's an unlikely scenario. And here's the rub in terms of where I think I'm getting stuck in thinking in this thought experiment. There are APIs and workflows that you have to navigate, right? So if I'm going to be this, super expert doctor suddenly with the help of AGI, I need to still be able to get into the medical systems, look at the medical records and medical research and so on and so forth. So there is a vertical workflow, there's a vertical industry structure that we operate within. just because there's a technology that is capable of learning at a furious pace, are we going to do away with all of those infrastructures? It's security, it's privacy, it's, as you talked about, HIPAA, blah, blah, blah. I mean, compliance, there's all kinds of things that an industry is built with. Are we going to do away with all that?
Of course not. And I think your instincts are absolutely right, to the point that there is a subset of researchers who believe that the path to AGI relies on being embodied in a human-like device. In other words, they believe that part of the reason that we are as intelligent as we are and we are able to learn and do all of these things is because we have a particular shape and form when we are born as children, and we learn a lot from the environment that we interact with and thereby become more intelligent. And that is intrinsic to our ability to achieve this form of AGI that we have. And so they are actually building robots and physical devices and trying to embody AI in a physical body. And they believe that they'll get faster learning from that methods. We don't know the answers. These are research topics. If you want to do a PhD in AI and AGI, that's a great area to go work in. But it is not a way to entrepreneurship, in my opinion. Entrepreneurship is about getting to a commercial product relatively quickly. For a traditional VC, it's within 1 to 2 years. For a very patient VC, it may be 3, 4, 5 years. But that's about the maximum time you have. And so you're really out of the realm of science.
What we say is it's you go from 0 to $100 million in 5 to 7 years. Otherwise, you don't have a venture scale company. And that's the reality of our business. So, the other thing that you brought up about the human form, humanoid form is not the most efficient from a robotics point of view, right? Humanoid robots cannot do simple things that human beings can do. And is it really worthwhile to invest in training those humanoid robots to do simple, silly things like making coffee? Hey, come on, it's a waste of your time.
It could be. I mean, but again, that's why it's a research topic. We don't know. There may be some deep insight, by training a humanoid to make coffee in an arbitrary kitchen. I think you're referring to that famous test for AGI. Can this machine walk into an arbitrary kitchen and make a cup of coffee for itself? Most human beings can do that very easily. It would be impossible today to solve that. Maybe there's some learning, maybe there's some insight in that. And perhaps we can, put a bow on this whole discussion by recognizing that AI today, the things that we are so excited about, AGI and ChatGPT and all of these LLMs, etc., we still don't know how they work. We still don't know why they work. We don't have any first principles research which has solved that problem. We just know they work. We know they do certain things in a certain way, which we find useful. Okay, wonderful. But it's just an empirical observation. There's no magic. We haven't figured out why they work. So at some point, my hope and belief is that we will come to the first principles definition of what is intelligence, and from that derive an AGI. And then maybe we can derive what you're talking about, which is a general form of AGI, which can know everything and do everything that an intelligence could ever do. When I trained as an engineer, we studied Nyquist's theorem and we studied Shannon's and information theory and some of these, very fundamental principles and theorems that exist in knowledge. None of that has been applied to AGI. None of that has been applied to information. Surely there is some match over there. And the simplest empirical observation is right now I'm using roughly 20 watts. You're using roughly 20 watts to have this conversation. Our brains consume, order of 20 watts. And here we are using hundreds of megawatts to do a much more.
Our story is a very complex story, yes. Exactly. As you were talking about your training, I was thinking about my engineering training, and one of my favorite courses at MIT was Anant Agarwal's VLSI design course. And that is actually very automatable, right? That you train AI to do chip design, AI can design great chips. This is a highly automatable problem.
Yes. So it's ironic that one of the first applications for AI has been software development.
Software development, exactly.
software is being developed using AI, which is wonderful.
Yeah,
So
and that's going to go a long way. I mean, there is a very large population of people in the world today make their living as software developers, and if that becomes an AI job, then that's going to that the evolution of that profession is going to be a very interesting one. My thesis is that that profession is going to become entrepreneurs, because if you have understanding of how AI works and you can use tools to actually do that work, at least that's a great background with which to come up with new problems that you solve using all those tools and technologies. And that probably will explode entrepreneurship even further.
yes, I have a company which is working exactly in that space called Cognitors,
Yeah.
where the founder has written, and I won't go into too much detail here, but in effect, a compiler that cannot hallucinate, that works with LLMs, so with which you can automate tasks. So it is a guaranteed 100% hallucination-proof way of automating tasks using LLMs. And that's the wonders of creativity of the human brain, of entrepreneurship. People come up with new ideas all the time. So
yeah. So my last question, what do you think you would be investing in 5 years' time? You know, we're seeing this market develop. You know, we've kind of been in this business for a while. We can see, you know, these trends. Like, you know, it's not difficult for me to pick up the past trend because I've seen this movie before. I know how, you know, past works. I know how a developer ecosystem works. It's kind of obvious to me that this is the direction this business is going to go. And then the VCs will invest in those applications developed on platforms, et cetera, et cetera. So we, you know, the industry has been around. We can, you know, we can extrapolate some of it. What are you extrapolating? What are your assumptions? What are your predictions, which are, I'm sure, informing how you are thinking about your strategy?
you know, before coming into venture capital, I used to run product management at VMware.
Yeah.
And my background is obviously as an operating executive, having run a company before. And we had a saying in product management: the problems stay the same, the solutions change.
Mm-hmm.
So 5 years from now, I still believe we will be working on the same problems, the same opportunities. How do we make people more efficient? How do we process information? What tasks are interesting to people? The motivations of human beings, you know, feeding people's ego, greed, etc., which is where a lot of the consumer work gets done. You know, feeding the seven sins for people. And but the technologies change, the solutions change for doing it. So the real question that you're asking in my mind reduces to what will be the technologies 5 years from now that we would be looking at from an investment perspective.
Yes.
I absolutely believe that AI is one of those transformational technologies which will be very relevant, important, and would have developed even more 5 years from now and will be at its peak in terms of commercial viability and application. So just like the internet, you know, exploded on the public scene in 1994 with the IPO for Netscape, but the internet had been around for decades before that, right? The
Yeah.
internet existed, the networks existed, but people started using the internet, you
The
know,
browser exists.
with the web browser. Similarly, ChatGPT brought AI to the forefront. And for the next 5 years, it is going to be an AI first world where we will be still investing in AI.
Now, actually, I said it was going to be the last question, but it just, as I was listening to you, something else came to my mind, which is, you know, we have seen incredible amount of investment in software as a service for the last 15 years. I think I would say 2008 around then is when SaaS kind of became mainstream. Of course, Salesforce started in 1999, but really the cloud business became mainstream in the mid 2000s after the nuclear winter, et cetera, right? So now that's a long time already. That's already 20 years almost. But now, you know, all these SaaS companies, including the ones that are, you know, 5, 10, 20, 30, $40 million in revenue, have to put AI in their heart of their applications. Otherwise, there are other companies out there that are coming into the market with AI as, they're leading with the current cutting edge technology, and the ones that don't have AI in their middle or in their heart are facing obsolescence problems. How do you think this is going to play out?
Yeah, so this is the inevitable march. This is creative destruction at its finest. This is what happens when a new technology comes along, a new capability comes along. Let's separate SaaS into two pieces. The reason software as a service became so popular is that one, it was a more efficient delivery mechanism.
Yes.
It was a way of delivering software and capability to people, but it was also a business model that was very attractive for many reasons. The monthly recurring or the annual recurring fees, and being able to charge for it in that
revenue predictability became very attractive for investors.
Exactly. And so, those are the two sides of SaaS. And so in terms of the delivery mechanism, there's nothing which says that AI cannot be delivered through SaaS or should or should not.
Stay with the same model. That works. It's a good one. So let's
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And so other than special cases like the mobile phone, where clearly on-device capabilities are very important, and Apple, proved that you had to have and control the device to be able to deliver some features at an excellent level. In most other cases, you can deliver through other devices, and SaaS delivery is very viable. And so there will be a vast amount of business that will simply look and behave like SaaS, but will be based on AI. Which
it's AI SaaS. That's going to be AI SaaS, basically.
Exactly. It's really going to be AI behind the scenes over there. So
if you're a new company and you're coming into the market as an AI SaaS company, that's wonderful. But the ones who are further along and who are getting disrupted a bit, that's where I think they're facing problems.
Yes, if you are an existing business, you have 10, 20, $40 million in revenues, you built it on an old stack, you're going to get out of date very, very quickly, unless you can find a way of bringing AI into your offering and building your company with that mechanism.
Technically, this is not an easy thing to do at all.
Extremely hard to do.
This is extremely hard to do.
Dilemma. This is extremely hard to do. And this is also why, to an earlier discussion, Shamana, that we had, venture-backed companies succeed when they move fast, and you really only have a few years of window to build your business. If you think you have 10 or 20 years to do it, you don't. The technologies will be different, the markets will be different, your use cases will have changed. And so you have to run really, really fast. And speed is actually one of the best correlations with success. So if
in venture funded, absolutely, there's no question. Yeah.
Speed is one of the best correlations over there. So run fast, even at the cost of making mistakes. People who make mistakes but run faster end up winning compared to people who don't make mistakes but run slower.
All right. Is there anything I should have asked you that I did not?
No, I really enjoyed the conversation. Obviously AI is very topical today. It is an area that I am actively investing in, have been investing for the last 5-7 years. So if anybody wants to start a company with a technical insight, please reach out and I'd be happy to write you your first check. Well,
there will be lots of distribution of your interviews, so I'm sure you will get lots of those. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ashmeet. It was great catching up with you a bit, and look forward to talking more in due course.
Thank you.
So, folks, we are not doing any entrepreneur pitches today. I have to run. I'm going to quickly give you a rundown on how to use 1 million by 1 million. As you have seen probably in our communication, we are really focusing on the velocity question right now. Because, when we started 1 million by 1 million, the market was different. The market had maybe 6,000-7,000 venture funded companies. And now there are probably 75,000 venture funded companies around the world. Just in the US, there are more than 54,000 at the end of 2023. And if you look at the incubator accelerator funded companies, it's crazy. It's probably, we're talking about 250,000 companies that have received some degree of funding, and they all have to aspire for velocity. They don't have a choice. The minute you get into this incubator, accelerator, angel funding, micro VC funding, traditional VC funding game, this is a velocity game, and you have to find velocity. So if you're looking for help with that, you are welcome to come to 1 million by 1 million, and we will work on your strategy on how you can achieve velocity. And in my experience, there is a really poorly understood discipline that's at the heart of velocity, which is positioning. Whether it's product market fit or repeatability or any kind of velocity issue, you have to get your positioning right. And it is a very crowded market, right? In a crowded market, you have to be able to distinguish yourselves. Why are you doing something? What is your unfair advantage? These are the questions that we are wrestling with on a daily basis in 1 million by 1 million. This forum here is our free program. You can come and pitch here normally at the roundtables, but only once. After that, if you want to work with me, you need to join the premium program and go to the website and look at what the premium program offers. There is strategy consulting, extensive strategy consulting that happens in private roundtables, and that is one of the key ways that we add value. We also introduce you to investors. We have lots of investor relationships, but there's no point going to investors to be rejected. Most companies that go to, and Ashmeet will probably be able to underscore my point, is that most companies that go to investors get rejected. You're not ready, you're not fundable, you're not ready. So what is the point of going to 40 investors to be rejected 40 times? There is no point. So keep that in mind. We will only send you to investors when we think you are ready. We do have a lot of curriculum that we have developed over the years. It's all case study based, and you can look at the 1Mby1M curriculum and you can start learning there. If you're early and you have a lot of knowledge gap on how to put one foot before the other, the 1 million by 1 million curriculum is a great place to start. And this is something that we've introduced more recently, we've had it, but we never emphasize it, but we keep getting more and more requests. One-on-one consulting. You want privacy. You want to talk to me one-on-one. Okay, go to the website. There is one-on-one consulting on the roster now. You can use it. You're very welcome to access one-on-one consulting as well, if that's what you want. The upcoming free roundtables are July 18th, 25th, and then all Thursdays in August. So you have 7 roundtables between now and end of August, end of summer. So lots of work can get done if you're not going on a long vacation. And we are not going on a long vacation, so you're welcome to come and work here. If you have questions about the program, Irina Patterson is your contact, irina@1mby1m.com. She can also get on the phone with you and answer your questions and brainstorm with you on how to use the program. That is it. I thank you again, Ashmeet, for being here today. And it was a fabulous conversation. I really loved the conversation, and it was so deeply insightful that I hope a lot of AI entrepreneurs and investors actually listen to it, because there's a lot of naivety in the investment world as well, and that naivety, you as a micro VC, no, you cannot go in and invest in a new LLM company. You're going to get washed out like you've never seen before, and that's the end of your VC career. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the session today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye, Ashmeet. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.